Chapter 1. That's Life. No jobs in the cupboard. Billy, a young man from London, had no job. He lived with his mother, Mrs. Harris. One day he asked her, "How can I get a job?" "Look in the newspaper," she answered. So he bought a paper and looked for jobs. There were a lot of jobs in London. He read the paper from front to back, but most of them were not right for him. Suddenly, he saw a good job in an office, so he wrote a letter to the boss of the office and sent it. A week later, he got a letter from the boss, Mr. Davidson. He showed the letter to his mother. "Please come to my office next Monday. I want to meet you and we can talk about the job." Mrs. Harris was quite excited and Billy was happy, but he was also very nervous. On the Monday morning, Billy got up early and had breakfast. He left the house and went to Mr. Davidson's office. There were 7 people there for one job. Mr. Davidson asked him to come into his office, and the other 6 people waited outside. He asked Billy a lot of questions. He was nervous, and he answered the questions badly. When Mr. Davidson finished, he smiled at Billy and said, "Thank you, Mr. Harris. Please wait outside." Billy thought, "I didn't answer all those questions very well." He stood up and walked to the door. But he made a mistake. It wasn't the door out of the office. It was a cupboard. What can I do now? Do I stay in the cupboard and wait, or do I go back into the office? He thought. Perhaps I'll stay here and wait. When they're all gone, I can come out again. Mr. Davidson spoke to the other 6 people, and one by one they went out. At 5 o'clock, Mr. Davidson went home. Billy didn't know the time, so he stayed in the cupboard. He was very tired, and he went to sleep. He slept for a long time. Next morning, the cleaner came in. She opened the door of the cupboard and found Billy. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "I came here for a job. Did I get it, do you know?" The Wrong Lover. A man from London, Mr. Harvey, had a very beautiful young wife. He was much older than his wife, and he began to think she was in love with a younger man. For many weeks, he thought about his wife and this other man. Every day he went to work, and he was more and more unhappy when he thought about them together. "What can I do? Am I too old for her? Perhaps she doesn't love me," he thought. He knew that his wife was at home all day. What does she do? Is she happy? Does she meet other men? One day, Mr. Harvey thought, "I'll go home in the afternoon. I don't usually arrive home at this time, so perhaps I can catch my wife with her young man." He arrived at his house at 2:30 that afternoon, and he was very angry because there was an expensive red car in front of his house. "That's the young man's car," he thought. He sat in his car and made a plan. "I know. I'll break the windows of the car." He found a small, heavy box in his car, and he broke every window of the red car with it, and the lights. After that, he sat and waited. 5 minutes later, a young man came out of Mr. Harvey's house and said goodbye to the beautiful Mrs. Harvey. Then this young man walked across to a big tree in the front garden, took an old bicycle and rode away down the street. The bigger, the better. A rich woman drove her big, expensive new car to the supermarket. She arrived and thought, "There aren't many places to park the car. Where can I leave it?" Suddenly, she saw a parking place between a big blue car and a motorbike, but it was very small. "It's going to be very difficult to get this big car in there, but I'll try." At the same time, 2 young women in a small old car came to the supermarket. "Where can we put the car?" the driver asked her friend. "Look, there's a good place, near that blue car over there," she said. It was the same parking place between the blue car and the motorbike. "Oh, yes," the driver said. "I can easily get in there." The rich woman started to turn her car into the parking place. "I hope I can get in there," she thought. Suddenly, the 2 young women drove into the parking place in front of her. The driver opened the window, looked at the rich woman and said, "When you learn to drive that big car, then you can do that too." The rich woman was very angry, but she said nothing. She turned her car and drove back as far as she could. Then she drove fast at the small car and hit it hard. She broke the lights and other things on the small car. She opened her window and called to the 2 young women. "When you have money, then you can do that too." Cheap and easy. In a small town in the north of England, there was a big library with a lot of interesting books in it. People in the town could take the books home for 4 weeks and read them. They could have as many as 4 books each time. Different books about animals, boats, cooking and holidays or love stories. And then they had to take them back to the library. Every year, the library bought more and more books, and soon the building was too small for all the books. One morning in early autumn, the boss said, "November the 28th is a big day for us. We're going to move to a new library building. It's a much bigger and better building, but there's one difficult problem. It's going to be very expensive to move all our books to the new building. Where are we going to find the money and the time?" the boss asked. The people in the library thought about this problem. One evening, 5 weeks before November the 28th, a young woman thought of a good plan. She went and talked to the boss about it. He was very interested, and together they planned it all carefully. 2 weeks later, the boss told the people about the plan. "Between now and November the 28th, everybody can take 6 books home, not 4 books as usual, and they can have the books for 6 weeks, not 4. Everybody in the town was very happy, and they took 5 or 6 books home. After 2 weeks, most of the books were out of the library. On November the 28th, the big day arrived, and they moved to the new building. It was quite easy because they had only a small number of books to move there. In the month after the move, everybody took their books to the new library. The boss was very happy because it was quite cheap to move and it was quick and easy too.
If you want to improve your English, listen and practice.